Caroline Williams. We'll hear more from her later. Let's now turn, though, to Dr. Alan Mendoza, the Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. It's a transatlantic foreign policy and national security think tank. Dr. Liston, thank you so much for being with us this morning. I know a lot of people are listening to the news and really not knowing what to make of it. Let's start with what Australia have said. So Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister there, is warning a full-scale invasion is likely to occur within the next 24 hours. Are you minded to agree?
Yes, I mean, I think Putin has ratcheted up the tension and ratcheted up the actions he's taken over the last week in particular, and clearly, recognising the breakaway provinces and now authorising the use of Russian troops in them is the next step in this process. And what will then happen, of course, is the troops will cross in a major way. Then there'll be some more provocations, and then they will slice off the next bit of Ukraine. So yes, I would say that certainly our characterization that an invasion is occurring is correct, and it's going to get worse.
What about the sanctions? Let's start with the UK that Boris Johnson announced yesterday. Will they make him think again?
Unlikely on this current package, not really tough enough. I mean, it's a decent start, of course. It shows intent. The fact that other countries have joined in. You did mention Australia. We've had the US, we've had Canada. Interestingly, we've also had Japan, which is crucial from a financial perspective. So there have been some good signs, and the Germans with the Nord Stream pipeline. But these sort of look like sanctions at the moment to punish Putin for doing step one rather than deterring him to step two. And the whole point of doing sanctions surely must be to deter him from further action. So I do hope that actually, even if nothing else happens today, more sanctions might be announced to do the deterrence part of the equation.
Do you think this is done on purpose, that you wouldn't put all your cards on the table straight away? This is essentially perhaps the shot across the bows, and Boris Johnson has a lot in his back pocket.
Well, it's one strategy. The other strategy would be that you don't fire your entire load, as you suggested right at the start. What you're trying to do is put in enough to deter him from step two. I think the balance might still fall on I can get away with step two if I was Putin thinking on this.
Right.
So, but we've got time to address that. We've got time to respond to his next moves. What's clear is that Putin is aware now that we will respond. I suppose what some of us would like is for us to be on the front foot rather than the back foot. Rather than us responding to his aggression, we should be trying to stop his next step in aggression.
I see. Some of my listeners, Alan, have written to me and said President Putin has genuine security concerns. Does he?
No, he doesn't. There is no threat. His line is that NATO is threatening him.
Yeah.
NATO is a defensive alliance. There's never been any talk or hint of NATO being an offensive alliance against Russia. Your viewers and me and you will all be surprised to hear that NATO is supposedly targeting Russia in this regard. Look, the reality is that there is a large degree of paranoia, but also a calculated sort of creation of a straw man in the sense of NATO. And this is what is driving Putin's propaganda war. I'm afraid there is no threat to Putin from this. There is no threat to Putin from Ukraine. Ukraine's not going to attack him either. So the idea that he's doing anything defensively here is for the birds.
Right, I see. So what does he want then? I know he's been talking about making sure that Ukraine doesn't join NATO. What else does he want?
Well, he would like as much of Ukraine as he can get his hands on. I mean,
Right.
He made that rambling speech 2 nights ago where he sort of, suggested once again that Ukraine's not really a nation. It was never a nation. The Russians were who created Ukraine as a nation, etc. So from that perspective, what I think he would like to essentially begin the process once again of recreating the Soviet Union. It's been something he's spoken of lots of times. And it's always tempting to ignore dictators when they say things like this. But as we've seen in the past, for example, Hitler or others, they often tell you what they intend to do and you ignore it at your peril.
I see. So if there was to be, conflict in the country, let's hope not, of course, everyone's saying it would be particularly bloody because, the two armies are quite well matched. What do you think?
Well, they are well matched in the sense they are both modern armies. However, the Russians are a much larger force and have got, sort of different weaponry. So it would be bloody in the sense the Ukrainians will defend their territory to the last person. This is a proud nation who has no interest in being subsumed to Russia. And just as if we were invaded by a neighbour, they will fight to the last, basically. So it'll be bloody in the sense that you're trying to take a homeland from a people who don't want to give it up. And of course, any occupation will be very, very bloody as well, because the Russians will be forced into extreme measures such as, shooting civilians, trial without juries, etc. Just getting on with things basically, and trying to keep the country suppressed by a large amount of force. So it's a very drastic move by Putin to even consider this. Yes. But perhaps his empire glory is more important to him than the consequences.
And if that were to happen, to what extent do you think the rest of Europe would be involved?
Well, if there was if you went down that scale all the way to the end, I mean, one would assume you would have mass sanctions on Russia by that point. All of Europe would surely have to be involved in such a flagrant breach of territorial sovereignty on the European continent. And of course, further afield, everyone in the free world would feel a deep sense of revulsion about this. The one unknown question at this point would be, would we actually intervene in some way, shape or form militarily? Again, I don't mean to fight the Russian troops. Nobody's going to go to war with Russia. Okay. But would we defend Ukraine in the sense of creating a space within which free Ukrainians could exist and survive? That's a different matter. But these are hopefully questions that are merely academic, because hopefully, again, we will have tougher sanctions that will deter Putin from taking such a drastic step.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying, he just wanted to make waves on the world stage. This is about his ego. And of course, it's made everyone sit up and take notice. Could that be enough?
Well, it will depend on what he ends up coming away from at the end of the day. He needs something more than just right now. To cause this level of disturbance in the national order, you need to walk away with a victory. Now, a base first objective to him would be perhaps to secure more territory for these breakaway eastern provinces in Ukraine. Now, if he comes away with that, and then also having some kind of success on the world stage, he may be satiated by that. However, there's a warning to him. The fact the US cancelled the summit on Thursday that he was hoping to have, or it was suggested he wanted to have, shows that he runs the risk of not becoming the international strongman he wanted to show the Russian people, but an international pariah. And that's quite important, because the prestige is very important to Putin. Yeah. And it's equally important to be able to show him that aggression will not lead to your aggrandizement, but instead will lead to your shunning by the international community.
On that point, listen, Dr. Alan, really enlightening to talk to you today. Thank you so much for your expertise on this matter. That's Dr. Alan Mendoza then, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. That is a transatlantic foreign policy and national security